can get started. Awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Today's webinar will be focusing on the SIMATIC S7-1200 basic controller. So first, I'd like to walk you guys through a short overview of the basic controller in a short PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll get right into the physical demo itself. If at any point during the presentation you have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the chat area. You'll notice a bubble-like icon towards the top of your Microsoft Teams window that says show conversation when you hover over top of it. If you click that icon, it'll open up the chat and you can submit your questions there. I'll ask Anna and Steven to just keep a lookout for the questions, and then we'll address them towards the end. All right, so is there a question? Okay. So before we get started, let me just tell you a little bit about us and what we do here at Applied Controls. So we are a local employee-owned high-tech automation distributor and solutions provider. We educate and support local manufacturers in implementing emerging technologies to not only reduce costs, but also to increase productivity and improve safety. Our offerings range from industrial computers and software to robotics, machine vision, and motion control. Here's an overview of our suppliers. As I've mentioned before, we support areas within automation, controls, vision, robotics. We'd be more than happy to share our line card with you, and feel free to contact myself or anyone else that applied, and we can send along more information. All right, so let's get started. So today, as I mentioned, we're focusing on the S7-1200, which is Siemens' basic controller. The S7-1200 is the successor to the S7-200 and has been developed for the global market. So the S7-200 products have been discontinued since about 2013. So for new applications, we recommend that products from the S7-1200 range should be used for those applications, along with the Step 7 basic configuration software. TIA Portal is what we use with the Step 7 basic licensing for programming the S7-1200s. Licenses are ordered separately from the hardware. So the SIMATIC S7 series of PLCs. So let's start with an overall background. So the S7-1200s is, as I mentioned, our basic controller. Siemens does offer as well advanced controllers, or 1500s, software controllers, or distributed controllers, otherwise known as the T200 SP CPU. The S7-1200 controller is the most versatile basic controller for small to mid-size applications. So for one, we have security integrated in our PLCs. So for example, a breach of a company's network, as we all know, can have significant effects on day-to-day business operations, customer information, product interruption, etc. So Siemens makes sure that there's integrated safety features in all of their controllers, including the S7-1200s. And in addition to that, we offer integrated diagnostics as well. So there's no programming required for these diagnostic capabilities. This just overall simplifies troubleshooting and minimizes downtime. And again, this all comes pre-configured in the PLC, so there's no additional programming on your end. Efficient engineering. So we offer efficient engineering and maintenance tasks that save time and costs overall. There's safety integrated as well in the PLCs. So if you choose to order a safety form factor of the PLC, You will be able to protect equipment and personnel from damage or injury. You can have a single network infrastructure for standard and safety data, as well as for standard and safety tasks as well. And our controllers cover up to SIL 3 safety as well. I forgot to mention also, we offer technology integrated capabilities as well. So anywhere from anything from standard motion control to PID control, condition monitoring, all of that is included within our S7-1200 controllers as well. So this is where the 1200 fits in terms of scalability to our other automation platforms. You can see that it's on the lower end. It goes a little bit into the distributed controller arena depending on your application and if you need to expand on I/O remotely. What's great about the 1200s is that because it's engineered within TIA Portal, and for all the controllers really within Siemens, what's great is that it's engineered within TIA Portal, so scalability into some of the other higher end controllers is something that Siemens offers essentially in a very seamless way. So in other words, you can copy and paste your code over from a 1200 up to a higher end controller with minimal engineering efforts, and you don't have to learn a whole nother engineering software like how some of the other companies use other software or various software depending on which PLC you're using. So with Siemens, everything is under one umbrella, which is TIA Portal. So today we'll be focusing, as I mentioned, on the 1200s, but it's worth noting that in addition to, as I mentioned, in addition to the 1200s, we offer higher end controllers as well. Sorry about that. So there are a variety of applications that customers have used the 1200s for, including, just to name a few, including conveyor applications, packing applications, electric power distribution, material handling, pump control, energy management. These are just some common applications that are possible with the S7-1200 basic controllers. So as I mentioned, the 1200s are programmed using Step 7 Basic. If you get the failsafe or safety version of the PLC, the safety code is programmed using a safety basic add-on. Now, if you were to work with the S7-300s or 400s or the higher end controllers, the 1500s, or any open controller or software controller, you would use what's called Step 7 Professional. Or if you're using safety, you'd use Step 7 Safety Advanced. But for the 1200s, you can use the lower end Step 7 Basic license. And what's great is that with all the Step 7 licenses, we also offer WinCC Basic included, so that you can program a basic HMI as well. And simulation and drive commissioning is all included at no extra charge with the software. And it's pretty much it regarding software. Let's talk a little bit about.
Could I add one thing?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that's important, like for Siemens, is that we really have one TIA Portal Step 7 installation. So no matter if you're using professional or basic, it's the same installation. Just depends on the license that you have is what's authorized. So it's only a single installation that does both. Good.
Great. Thanks for adding that, Stephen. So to go a little bit into the design and handling of the 1200s, which I'll go into a little bit more detail once we look at the physical demo itself. But you can see that there's an integrated power supply. There's a slot for an optional memory card if you'd like as well. We have status LEDs on the CPUs to indicate status and integrated I/O information. We have also removable terminal blocks, wiring purposes, and Profinet connection is towards the bottom of the CPU. Every CPU comes with at least one, if not two, Profinet ports. And there's also an expansion slot that you'll see in the middle of the CPU that's available for an optional signal board. If you need to expand one or two additional I/O, you can do that using the signal board. As far as design and handling, there are many different variations of the 1200s, ranging from the 1211s to the 1217s. So you'll notice that each variation offers different types of PLCs with respect to whether you want a DC power supply or an AC power supply. If you look towards the bottom here, a DC PLC will just mean that it's a 24 volt DC power supply where the inputs are also 24 volt and the outputs are 24 volt. Now, if you opt for an AC DC relay, that just means you'll have a 120 volt AC power supply that'll convert your inputs to DC, and then your outputs would be relay. That's just what that terminology indicates. And the highlighted options here implies that these are fail-safe versions of the PLC. So you'll notice that for the 1212s up to the 1215s, we offer fail-safe form factors of these PLCs as well. As far as dimensions are concerned, the height and depth of each PLC doesn't change. It's really just the width that changes based on the amount of integrated I/O. So you'll notice that as you go higher into the 1215 and 1217 variation, you'll see that the width of the PLC becomes a bit greater. And it does not extend further past 150 millimeters wide, which is, I believe, just about under 6 inches. Here's a little bit of information on performance specifications. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but it's worth noting that as you go higher up into the 1215 and 1217 CPUs, you'll notice that you're offered 2 Profinet ports. And the 1214s and below, you'll have 1 Profinet port available. And you'll also notice the difference in memory load as well. And if you take a look at the fail-safe variations of those CPUs, the fail-safe variations offer about 25 kilobytes more of memory than their respective standard CPU. And then you'll see the difference in integrated I/O as you go higher up in the variation type as well. As far as local expansion, you can expand up to 3 communication modules towards the left-hand side of the CPU itself. I'll talk a little bit more about that later as far as the different types of communication modules offered. With the 1211 CPU, you'll notice that you can't expand with further I/O modules, but if you bump up to the 1212 CPU, you can add 2 additional I/O modules to the right-hand side of the CPU. And then with the 1214s, 1215s, and 1217s, you can add up to 8 modules to the right-hand side of the CPU. And then there's always the option of adding additional I/O over Profinet if you'd like to add a distributed rack. All of the CPUs allow for that as well. As far as signal modules, the signal board that you see here in the center of the PLC allows you to expand, let's say, 1 or 2 more inputs or outputs rather than having to expand with a completely separate I/O module. So let's say you're crunched with space, you have limited options with expanding dimension-wise. You can expand I/O using the signal boards as well. And as I mentioned before, the CPUs come with integrated power supplies. You can add additional digital input cards, digital output cards. You can add hybrid cards that include both. You can also add analog inputs, analog outputs, again, hybrid modules available for those as well. And what's great is that we have what we call technology modules that offer a variety of additional technology capabilities that you can add to these 1200 CPUs. One of them being weighing modules. So whether that's for DMS load cells or analog strain gauge load or dosing applications, you can add these weighing modules to expand on those capabilities as well. We have condition monitoring systems. That's more for vibrations type of applications. And then we also have energy meter technology modules. So if you want to measure, record electrical parameters of a system, you can do that using that technology module. As far as communication modules, as I mentioned, you can add up to 3 on the left-hand side of the 1200 CPUs. This includes teleservice, serial communication, ASI communication, IO link, RFID identification, Profibus, RS485, as well as integrated Profinet ports that support additional Profinet ports, or also supports industrial Ethernet, Modbus TCP/IP, OPC UA, etc. Let's see. This is just a overview of the protocols that we support as well. So, as I mentioned, we support Profinet, Profibus, OPC UA, ASI, Modbus, etc. As far as accessories for the 1200, we offer simulator boards. So that's for simulating digital and analog inputs directly. So you would just wire that directly at the top of the CPU, and I'll show you that later on in the physical demo as well. We offer SIMATIC memory cards ranging from 4 megabytes to 32 gigabytes. You can expand on load memory or firmware using these SIMATIC cards. We also have compact switch modules, power modules as well, a battery board, and expansion cables is offered as well. As far as safety is concerned, as I mentioned before, we have security already integrated into all of our CPUs. So this is just a high-level overview of safety features that are available with the 1200s. So whether you want to protect your overall project, you can do that. You can set up different user accounts with different levels of security. You can, if you don't want to protect your entire project and just protect certain blocks within your program, you can do that as well. Integrated technology. So we talked about the technology modules and how those expand the capabilities of the 1200 PLC hardware itself, but we also have technology functions in the software that can be useful for many automation applications. So for example, with an integrated PID controller, we can easily configure closed loop control valve or heating tank applications. With integrated motion control, we can control a VFD, for example, by using several hardware interfaces, including the PTO channels, analog outputs, or integrated communication ports of the CPU. So overall, they're all within TIA Portal. There are easy to follow configuration screens within Portal that just allow users to configure these advanced technology functions without having to be an expert in PID controls or PID loops or motion control, for example. System diagnostics is a feature that Siemens really prides themselves with. If, for example, a system faults, such as an unplugged or faulty module, the CPU will automatically generate clear text information on what that diagnostic message is, as well as instructions on how to correct the fault. And all the diagnostics information is available through through multiple places. So whether that's directly on the hardware itself, or within Portal, or available on the integrated web server for the PLC as well, or on an HMI, for example, if you have that plugged onto your network. Now, last but not least, we have we mentioned safety. So we have safety integrated within the S7-1200s as well. So we have fail-safe form factors offered that meet all of the international safety standards without the need for any additional coprocessor or partner CPU. And the S7-1200 also supports safety over Profinet or ProfiSafe, sorry. So to sum it all up, if you're interested in getting started with Siemens and don't already have much experience with Siemens products, we offer starter kits that include the hardware, software, and simulation board. I'll show you another slide with pricing in a moment. But before that, I just want to show you this slide as well, with QR codes available for our newsletter, the tutorial center, and any upcoming webinars. All of this can be found on the Siemens site, and if it wasn't mentioned before, we'll have a PDF version of this to share with you guys so that you can access all of these links. As I mentioned before, we have S7-1200 basic controller starter kits for anyone that's interested in getting started. The AC/DC relay option of the starter kit costs about $295 for the starter kit, and then there's a fail-safe variation of the starter kit that's for about $575. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to us and we can get you more information on that. What I want to do now is show you the physical hardware itself and show you a bit more about the integrated web server. Again, the integrated web server is not only offered with our 1200s, it's offered with our 1500s as well. But I'll show you what it looks like for this particular demo. So what I'm going to do now is just going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment so that you can see my camera a bit more clearly. And I'm going to move my my camera over to the hardware. So just give me one moment.
So while Juliet's doing that, I just want to mention these starter kit prices are special prices for people that are attending this presentation.
All right. So hopefully you can see the hardware all right. Please let me know if I need to move anything closer or if it's not very clear. All right, let's see. All right, so what I want to show you guys now is just a look at the physical hardware itself. We'll just go through a brief run through, and I want to show you the integrated web server also. So starting with the demo itself, if you take a look here, I'm not sure if my webcam might be inverted, and if so, I apologize. But when you look,
you're good.
Good. Okay, great. So when you look at the PLC itself, you'll notice on the left-hand side of the PLC, you have a PM1207 power supply, and this just basically converts 120 volts AC to 24 volt DC, and that's then wired into the PLC here. The PLC that we're looking at here is a 1215 FC. Again, F indicating that it's a failsafe PLC, and then C indicating that it's a compact PLC. And this is a DC-DC-DC variation of the CPU. So as I mentioned before, DC meaning DC power going into the PLC, it has an internal DC power supply, which is why we're using this power module here to convert AC to DC. And then it has DC inputs and DC outputs. As I mentioned, we have a variation of PLCs that come in a failsafe or standard form factor. You can, with this failsafe versions, you can get up to SIL 3 performance level E, again, without any additional safety partner or safety processor. And the programming, as we mentioned, is done within TIA Portal Step 7 Basic. And the safety is also programmed within Portal as well. Again, everything is within Portal. What you see to the right-hand side of the CPU here is a Serious Act Profinet-enabled push button. So this is actually an e-stop using safety over Profinet, connected directly into the CPU here using a Profinet cable. So just a little bit more of a recap about the simple design and handling features of the 1200. As I mentioned, it's a compact design with integrated I/O. So you'll notice here that we have integrated digital inputs at the top. We also have analog inputs and outputs, as well as integrated digital outputs at the bottom here. I'm not sure if you can see the bottom hand, but they're there. The terminal blocks that you see here for the I/O are, they're actually removable, which means that you can exchange them for push-in terminal types if you'd like. You'll also notice that underneath the top flap here, there's a slot for an optional SD memory card. Those memory cards can be used for program updates, firmware updates, or just to expand the internal load memory of the PLC. Again, expansion is expansion via the option board here in the center here is also an option, or you can expand with additional I/O modules to the right-hand side of the PLC here. And just as a reminder, we offer not only standard input and output cards, but we also offer fail-safe variations of those cards as well. Again, up to SIL 3 performance level E. And those technology modules that I mentioned earlier that include the weigh modules, the energy metering, and the condition monitoring for vibration analysis, for example, those are all added to the right-hand side of the CPU here. Let's see. And then to the left-hand side, regardless of whether or not you have this power module here, you would add the communication modules to the left-hand side. So some of the protocols that are included in what we offer include Ethernet, Profibus, OSI, IO-Link, GPRS, RFID, RS-232, etc. The ESAP here, I just want to note, is wired directly into the PLC via ProfiSafe or safety over Profinet, so that I can achieve SIL 3 performance level safety E, or performance level E safety if I needed to by using Profinet enabled devices such as this one. And that includes e-stops, push buttons, light curtains, encoders, and even drives. What hopefully you can see here towards the bottom, you'll notice that this PLC, again, is a 1215, which offers 2-port Profinet ports built in for flexible topologies such as ring, line, star. And as I mentioned before, depending on which variation of the PLC you have, you'll either have one Profinet port or two. So right now I have this Profinet cable going directly to the e-stop, and then the second Profinet here connected into my computer for programming purposes. or in this case, for me to be able to show you the web server that comes pre-configured and integrated into these PLCs. We have standard DIN rail mounting with these PLCs, and again, expansion via remote I/O is also an option. What I want to do now is show you the integrated web server features of the 1200. So what I'm going to do is share my screen again. Let's see.
Hey, Juliet.
Yep.
We also have a question from Eric. Could you elaborate on the failsafe?
I was just finishing typing a response. You'll see it in a second.
Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it. All right. So, all right. Let me know, please, if you cannot see my shared screen at this point. You should see just an intro page.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. All right. So, so as I mentioned, with these 1200s and with most of our Siemens's PLCs, if not all, we offer a integrated web server. And so as long as you're on the network trying to access the web server, you would just type in the IP address of the PLC, which in this case is 129.168.0.1. You would type that in using a secure connection, and it'll take you to this entry page. Now, if we hit enter, you'll notice that, and I apologize, I have slow connection, but here it is. In the start, you'll notice that you'll have a login area up top here. And if you're not logged in, you'll just see that introduction page or entry page and a start page here. And this start page just gives you very, very basic general information on your PLC. So, you know, the PLC name, what version of the software you're using, is it in run mode, is it in stop mode? So for example, if I were to, well, I'll show you that in the next step. And then some additional fail-safe information down here. Now, to really be able to access the rest of the web server features, what we're going to do is we're going to log in with one of the user accounts, and this is going to give us access to all of the features, so I can show you for this demo. But just so you are aware, if you want to set up various user accounts that only limit you to looking at information and not being able to edit any information, you can set that up and configure it within Portal. It's a fairly simple process, and it does not require any, significant programming knowledge or expertise to be able to do that. And as far as configuring this web server itself, to enable it, it's simply a checkbox within the hardware configuration settings of the PLC in TIA Portal. So you just click on that checkbox and it enables your web server, and then you can manage different user accounts if you'd like within Portal as well. So you notice that once I logged in, I noticed all of these additional features available, and we'll just go one by one and just give a brief overview so you guys are aware of the different features that you have access to. So now that I'm logged in, I have the ability to stop my PLC directly from the web server. So I'm going to go here and click OK. And if you can still see the hardware itself from my webcam, you'll notice that the PLC now is in stop mode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back into run mode. Again, I'm doing this from the web server. I can do this within TIA Portal as well, or go directly to the hardware and cut power. But that just goes to show you can control the PLC from multiple locations. So let's see. I have, again, built-in diagnostic information that I can access from this web server. It should be loading momentarily. Sorry, again, I have very spotty internet connection here, so just bear with me for a moment. There it is. So again, built-in diagnostics. None of this was programmed prior to me showing this demo. This is all integrated within our PLCs. So I can look at overall hardware firmware information. If I need to know, I'm not in front of my hardware, I need to know, what the part number is. I can look at that via the web server. I can look at, sorry, it's loading. I can look at program protection information as well. Memory information. So this is great for, looking to see whether or not you have enough load memory for your overall program or application. You can go in here and double check on that. You can look at your work memory, how much retentive memory is being used. All of that you can see directly here from the web server. And in this case, we're using a failsafe CPU. So you would see this tab would just be blank if you're using a standard form factor, but in this case, we're using a failsafe form factor, and so you see here what the current cycle time is, what your max cycle time is, current runtime, and max runtime. Now, if we go to the diagnostic buffer, you'll notice that, and again, I apologize, it's just taking a bit. You'll notice that I have all the diagnostic information available for my PLC. So let's say, for example, or just to start earlier, I changed my PCU from startup to run mode, right? I stopped the PLC and then I put it back into run mode. All of that is being logged here. And, if you want to look at additional entries of diagnostic information, you can expand on that here. You can save all of this information or go to print it out. If you need, further information on diagnostics, this is where you would go to in the web server. Now, towards the bottom hand side here, you'll notice additional information on the particular diagnostics. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unplug that e-stop from the PLC. And again, I have slow connection, so it'll take a moment to load. But what you'll notice is that the diagnostic information is going to load here in this diagnostic buffer. And let's see. So what you'll notice is that it normally does not take that long at all. It's simply because of my own personal connection here. But you'll notice that the IO device failure error will show up in this diagnostic buffer. And if you click on these different events, you'll notice that towards the bottom here, that information will give you a little bit more detail as far as what exactly is occurring. So it's saying here, IO device not found, hardware ID 270. In a lot of cases with the diagnostic buffer, let's say, for example, you have additional IO cards on your rack, it'll be able to tell you which IO card the failure is occurring at, and additional information as far as what that failure is with respect to. So just, for example, not only with the 1200s, but in general, if you have a 1200, a 1500, or remote IO, the diagnostics that Siemens offers is very, very detailed and can be grabbed from multiple locations. And not only will you know directly on the hardware itself, but at the different IO cards, you'll know that an error has occurred based on this diagnostics information. As far as module information, just give it a second to load. So here we have information on our overall Profinet system. We're looking at the 1200 PLC in this case. So if we click on this, it'll give us more information on the module itself. So for example, order number, if I had additional IO cards configured in this station, that would also show up. I'd be able to see input, output information as well. Communication, the communication tab allows you to see So the communication tab allows you to see network connection information as well. So for example, IP address, what subnet are you operating on, physical properties. So in this case, we have 2 Profinet ports. If for whatever reason you're not getting a signal, that would indicate here. And you're also provided with statistics information, as well as connection information. So when it comes to sending and receiving data packages, you'll see information here as well. And as well as connection resources. So I would typically use this tab to look at what number of connections are allowed with this particular device. So it'll tell you you have 128 maximum connections allowed, and 127 of those are not currently being used. So you know if you have a large number of connections, you can come here and see, okay, how many do I have left? As well as looking at the connection status here. So you can see here connection is established. If you're having any type of connection issues, that would show up under this tab here, as well as address details towards the bottom. So typically with the web server, what you'll see is you'll have a bunch of settings or information here at the top, and if there's additional detail provided for that, you'll see it towards the bottom side of the window. Now, what's also great about the web server is that you can see here under the tag status. So we don't have any tags set up currently, but if you wanted to monitor tags, you would do that within this tab here. You can monitor tags. You could even modify values of tags directly from the web server, providing that whatever user you're logged in as has the capability of doing so. But again, you could configure a user account where one cannot modify the value; they can only monitor it. And you can look at all the tag statuses here. You can also, again, print out information within all of these tabs. You can print out information up here at the right-hand side. You can have a variety of watch tables showing within the web server. So here we have one watch table, but if you had multiple, you'd be able to drop down here and select which watch table you want to look at. And you can monitor various tags using the watch table as well. So I, again, am having difficulty with my Wi-Fi connection here, so everything isn't loading as quickly as it normally would, but this would all happen in real time. With the online backup tab here, if you want to create an online backup, again, you can do that right here from the web server. You can also restore the PLC. Let's say you can't physically get to the PLC, but you can access the web server. You can do all of that from the web server here. We also have data log features. You can store data logs here, access them from the web server, save them, retrieve them, delete them, print them out. We also have user file capability. So let's say you want to provide users with user manuals, for example.
Juliet, hold. Just a comment. If you guys can't see the web page that she's showing, if you just click on the picture down below, that will highlight it and bring it up higher. You can continue.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So, as I mentioned, if let's say you have a user that needs to access manuals while on site or whatever the case is, they can access that through the web server, and you can just place all of that here under user files. We also have what's called user-defined pages, and that allows you to create, let's see if this will open, which it should, but again, I'm having trouble with connections today. I'm not sure why, but as that's loading, basically what the user-defined pages feature allows you to do is create your own user-defined pages. So in this case, we have a PID technology object simulation web page that was previously configured. And if I go here and turn on the drive control, I can simulate a drive speed set point. And you'll see here, I set the set point to 615, and you'll see the drive ramping up to that actual speed here. So all of this is done within that user-defined web page. This particular web page just shows an integrated PID loop functionality that, again, is offered within these S7-1200s. And if I go ahead and disable, you'll notice that the set point ramps back down to whatever comes from that analog potentiometer, being as this is how it's programmed for the demo purpose. Let's see what else. You can also program it such that those user-defined pages are connected to, tags within your program, and you can monitor that via the watch table. You also have motion control capability when motion control is used. You also have that feature offered in the web server as well. And then for certain CPUs, and then last but not least, there's a file browser tab as well, where you can store data logs, recipes, website files, etc. So overall, there's a lot of functionality within the web server itself that, again, it all comes pre-integrated with the S7-1200s, as well as the S7-1500s. But for a basic controller, we offer a lot of diagnostic and troubleshooting and technology features already integrated with these CPUs and additional technology modules. So what I'm going to do now is pull up our contact slide. Share that in a moment. That's pretty much all I have prepared for the demo itself. We have some time for questions if anyone has any. Let me just pull up our contact slide really quickly so that you guys can feel free to contact us if you have any questions or concerns, or you want more information. Again, we have the starter kits available as well if you guys are interested in that to help get started. My contact information is here. My name is Juliet Sardin. I'm one of the automation specialists that applied, and Steve Arnold, who you heard earlier, is also on the call, and here's his contact information as well. With that being said, thank you all so much for attending, and we can go right into any questions that anyone has. Let me see if I can pull up the chat.
Yeah, we pretty much covered all the questions that came up, but if anyone has any specific ones, you feel free to ask. Unmute yourself and ask away.
So this is actually a really good point, worth noting for anyone that might not have the chat open. I'll just read this out for you guys. So it's, as Stephen mentioned earlier, TIA Portal is the name of the software that Siemens offers, and you can think of it as a shell that contains multiple functions. And so, for example, in TIA Portal, we have PLC programming step 7 and HMI programming, which is covered under WinCC, and then drive configuration, which is covered under starter. And you don't necessarily buy TIA Portal. It's an installation that you would then buy licenses to support different parts of the software. All right, if no one has any additional questions, you're free to go. Again, thank you all for attending. Thank you for your time, and feel free to reach out with any questions you may have later on, or if there's anything that any information you'd like us to send you, please reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.